There's a very specific kind of confidence. Not the loud kind, not the fake Instagram kind. The quiet one. The one that creeps in after a few good trades, after a clean win streak, after you finally feel like, I get it now. You don't say it out loud, but inside something shifts. Your shoulders relax, your breathing changes. You start looking at the chart differently, less cautious, more certain. And that's usually the moment everything begins to fall apart. Not because the market changed, but because you did. The moment you feel confident, the market already knows. It knows because your behavior changes, and you don't even notice it. You've studied enough now. You've watched the videos, you've journaled, you've suffered. You've taken losses that humbled you. You've experienced those painful nights where you stare at the ceiling replaying your mistakes. And then, slowly, something improves. You start seeing setups more clearly. You hesitate less. You execute better. You follow your plan for 3 days in a row, then 5, then 10. You feel disciplined. You feel in control. You tell yourself, finally, I'm not that emotional beginner anymore. Finally, I'm trading like a professional. Finally, it's clicking. And the strange part, it actually is clicking. Your results improve. Your P&L reflects progress. Your journal looks cleaner. You feel stable. But inside that stability, something subtle is growing. Not skill, not discipline, ego. Not loud ego, quiet ego. The kind that whispers, you're different now. The kind that says, you figured it out. And you don't notice when patience turns into anticipation. You don't notice when discipline turns into belief. You don't notice when probability turns into certainty. You still think you're calm, but now you're attached to the idea that you're finally there. And that's where the illusion begins. Because in trading, the moment you think you've arrived, you've already stepped into a trap. It starts small. You see a setup. It's not perfect, but you've been winning lately. And lately, you've been reading the market well. You tell yourself, I can handle this one. You take it, it works. Of course it works. Now the confidence doubles. Now the internal voice gets stronger. You see, you're not like before. So the next time, you stretch your rules a little further. Not recklessly, just slightly. You justify it with experience. I've seen this before. I know how this behaves. I don't need it to be textbook. And this is where the conflict begins. Because there are two versions of you inside that moment. One that built discipline through pain, and one that wants to feel powerful. One that respects probability, and one that wants to prove something. You feel it, that small tension before clicking, that subtle hesitation. And instead of honoring it, you override it, because confidence feels stronger than caution. You start entering faster. You stop waiting that extra minute. You increase size just slightly. You don't call it revenge trading. You call it conviction. You don't call it forcing trades. You call it reading momentum. You don't call it overconfidence. You call it growth. And this is how ego disguises itself. Not as arrogance, but as maturity. You're not screaming at the screen anymore. You're not panicking. You're calm. But you're also attached. Attached to being right. Attached to staying consistent. Attached to proving that you've evolved. And when the market doesn't cooperate, that's when the real conflict starts. Because now losing doesn't just hurt your account. It attacks your identity. I thought I was past this. I thought I'd leveled up. Why am I making this mistake again? You don't spiral outward, you spiral inward. Self-doubt creeps in, but so does stubbornness. Instead of stepping back, you lean in. You trade more to confirm you're still capable. You increase focus. You overanalyze. You try to fix something that wasn't broken. Because you can't accept that confidence was the very thing that distorted your vision. You don't see the trap. You think the market changed. But the market didn't change. Your relationship with certainty did. This phase is quiet. No one talks about it. You're not blowing accounts. You're not gambling. You're not out of control. You're just slightly off, slightly forcing, slightly reactive, slightly emotional. And those slightlys compound. Your equity curve starts flattening, then dipping. You start comparing. You look at other traders posting wins. You wonder how they're so steady. You question yourself again. And this is the dangerous part, because externally you look fine. Internally, you're fractured. You feel like you're close, so close, but somehow always misaligned. You begin questioning your instincts. You hesitate where you used to act. You act where you used to wait. You're not reckless, but you're no longer neutral. And neutrality, that quiet, detached clarity, that's gone. You begin feeling behind the version of yourself you thought you became, behind the progress you tasted, behind the identity you were building. You don't admit it to anyone, but you feel broken, not because you're losing, but because you don't trust yourself anymore. And this is where many traders get stuck for years, not in ignorance, not in lack of knowledge, but in identity confusion. Am I disciplined, or was I just lucky? Am I improving, or was that streak random? Was that confidence earned or imagined? And here's the hardest truth. Confidence in trading is never permanent. It's rented, and the market collects payment the moment you believe you own it. There's a moment, usually after a painful but quiet drawdown, where you sit back and instead of blaming the market, you look at yourself. Not your strategy, not the volatility, not the session, you. You replay your recent trades, not technically, psychologically. You notice the speed, the tone of your internal dialogue, the slight arrogance in your assumptions, the moments you didn't wait fully, the times you knew. And you see it, clearly. You weren't disciplined. You were confident. And confidence without awareness is just ego in disguise. You realize something uncomfortable. Your best trading didn't happen when you were confident. It happened when you were cautious, when you felt small, when you respected uncertainty, when you doubted your certainty. The shift hits you. The market didn't humble you. You humbled yourself by forgetting how fragile clarity really is. And there's no relief in this realization, just awareness, raw, cold, neutral. You see yourself, and for the first time, you stop trying to feel confident. You start feeling honest. This is where maturity begins, not when you feel powerful, but when you stop needing to feel powerful. You let go of urgency. You stop trying to prove you've evolved. You stop measuring your growth by streaks. You detach from being good. You detach from being consistent. You detach from the identity of a profitable trader. You focus on something simpler, presence. You wait longer than feels necessary. You reduce size not because you're scared, but because you respect variance. You question your certainty every single time. You no longer trust confidence, you trust process. And there's a difference. Confidence says, I know. Process says, I follow. You become slower, quieter, less reactive. You skip trades without emotional commentary. You accept losses without internal drama. You feel nothing when you win, nothing when you lose. Not because you're numb, but because you're stable. Discipline is no longer effort, it's identity. You don't need motivation, you don't need hype, you don't need to feel ready. You just execute when it aligns, and you sit when it doesn't. There's no rush to grow fast, no rush to prove anything. You understand now. The market punishes certainty, but it rewards humility. And humility isn't weakness, it's clarity without attachment. So let me ask you something quietly. When was the last time you felt truly confident? And what happened shortly after? Did you size up? Did you enter faster? Did you skip your full confirmation? Did you feel slightly untouchable? Be honest. Because the market doesn't punish you when you're afraid. It doesn't punish you when you're unsure. It punishes you when you think you figured it out. The moment you feel confident, the market already knows. Not because it's alive, not because it's watching you, but because your behavior changes the second your guard drops. So maybe the goal isn't to become confident. Maybe the goal is to remain cautious, to remain aware, to never let familiarity turn into assumption, to never let consistency turn into certainty, to stay small, mentally, even when your account grows. Because the traders who survive long term are not the ones who feel the strongest, they're the ones who respect how fragile strength really is. So the next time you feel that quiet confidence creeping in, pause. Don't celebrate it. Observe it. Because in trading, the moment you feel confident is the exact moment you need to become careful again. And that's not motivational, it's just true. Sit with that.